And with the Super Bowl countdown begun, we're here. This is a combination of the show in the arena with the show. What's your show?
The Sports Express.
Sports Express.
Even I knew the name of that.
I'm Joe Ricardo, and I'm here with my good friends. To my left is Joe Gilroy.
Hello.
To my immediate right is Attorney Larry Spagar. And to the far right is my good friend, Lackawanna County Judge Tom Munley. And I want to welcome everybody. Obviously, the first thing we're going to talk about for the first 20 minutes is the Super Bowl. The whole country is saying, "Who dat? Who dat?"
Yeah, that's right.
Getting ready for the New Orleans Saints, their first Super Bowl appearance. Judge Munley, what a storyline. This is a city that was at the brink of disaster.
That's right, Joe. And
That really is coming back from the abyss.
I am so proud of the Saints. I lived there 3 years. I went to law school there. You know that, Joe. And I used to go to the football games. Archie Manning was the quarterback.
Right.
And I remember at one time they were like 3-0, and everybody there was stickers on the car saying Archie is a Saint. You know, I'll never forget that. And then, of course, they went on to get shellacked the rest of the season. But,
Yeah.
But Joe, now with Peyton Manning on the other side of
They have a tall
on the
order,
other side,
the Saints. Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen.
But Joe Gilroy, this has really become America's story. I mean, we all remember the pictures of the Superdome during Katrina, the devastation, the lower Ninth Ward. Hey, New Orleans is in the Super Bowl, the first time ever. America has really taken to the story. They're called America's new team.
Yeah, that kind of bumped Dallas, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
America's team. But you know what Tom was saying about New Orleans. I worked in New Orleans at one time.
Right.
And actually, I've been to a game in the Superdome
Right.
years ago. The Dallas Cowboys and the New Orleans Saints. And you know, when you put two mediocre teams together, you had a pretty good game.
Right.
But what I'm getting at is, I went kind of unprepared. I happened to be in New Orleans. I happened to be stuck there on a Sunday. I walked up and got a ticket at the gate.
Right.
And the lady said to me, "Where do you want to sit?"
Have you been to New Orleans?
I've been to New Orleans many times, and I just want to echo in with all of you are saying, what the judge said about being in New Orleans, and Joe, what you're saying as far as being there, and Joe, what you're talking about. New Orleans loves their football. Louisiana people love their football. National championship, LSU, of course, that's a big tradition of theirs. But they love the Saints, and it is great to see what's been done there in the Superdome. And there's a lot of electricity. Who dat seems to be the momentum that the Saints are taking that cliche. The other one is when the Saints go marching in. And when the Saints are going into Miami, they're going to be marching in. There was a comment made about Archie Manning. Think about that, gentlemen. Think about Archie Manning, how proud. He was the face of a franchise in New Orleans. He's well loved, he's well liked, very well respected. Now he has the ability to go into a Super Bowl and watch on one side his former franchise, the New Orleans Saints, and on the other side he has his son, Peyton Manning, playing quarterback, the NFL Player of the Year for the Indianapolis Colts. How much of a win-win situation
The
is
Colts
that?
are kind of in a tough position in terms of, you know, everybody's rooting for the Saints. They could kind of be the spoilers. Of course, people in Indianapolis aren't, but I mean, it's a type of thing where the Saints have this really human interest tag on them. They seem to be America's sentimental favorite, but the Colts are and should be the favorites. I
Well,
mean,
the
the
Colts-
Saints are the underdogs.
So
The Colts could be like the Arizona Diamondbacks of 2001.
Right,
Yeah,
with
that's
the
right.
Yankees.
You know, everybody, all of a
Right.
sudden, the hated
After
Yankees, they
9/11.
like them after that.
Right.
Now it's gone back to the
As
tradition.
Larry knows, I make predictions, and my heart is with the Saints, but it's not going to happen.
Well, you know, take a look at it. I mean,
Being the
obviously
practical
the
person
key.
you are, sure.
The key is Peyton Manning, but take a look at this. Look at the quarterback matchups. Peyton Manning's 393 completions and 571 attempts, 4,500 yards passing, 33 TDs. Drew Brees, 363 completions, 514 attempts this season, 4,388 yards, over 4,000 yards passing, 34 TDs. I don't know if we ever had a Super Bowl where both quarterbacks match up so equally. I mean, everyone's talking about Peyton Manning, the general, which he is. It might be the best ever. But Drew Brees ain't no slouch.
Well, Drew Brees,
you're right,
I think,
he
is
is.
outstanding.
I agree with what Joe is saying, and I think that Drew Brees, there was a great article in the ESPN magazine, talked all about Drew Brees, where he made that decision. All he did was he took a ride around New Orleans, and he saw how devastated that city was by Katrina, and he said, you know what, this is my city. This is what I need to do. This is where I want to play, and this is what I want to do for this city. Get this team to the point where these people have some excitement in their lives and give them a championship. And like Joe said, I give Drew Brees a lot of credit for doing
The
that.
Saints certainly changed the whole city. I mean, this, New Orleans right now is becoming America's city. It was terrible, the devastation, but with the Saints, the way they're playing, I mean, who isn't proud? I'm so proud of them. I used to walk by that Superdome 2 or 3 times a week, just to train in the French Quarter.
The key is going to be the Jets, the Colts offensive line. Jeff Saturday, Ryan Lilja, guard Lilja. They have to protect Manning, because you saw what the Saints did to Brett Favre.
Well,
if Manning cannot get in his pocket and get into a zone, the Saints have a really good chance of winning this ball game.
yeah, and when you talk about Brett Favre, and Tom mentioned Archie Manning, we all, I think, mentioned Archie Manning, and for those too young to remember Archie Manning, he's Peyton Manning's father. But anyhow, Brett Favre kind of reminded me of Archie Manning.
And
the way,
Eli Manning's father
yeah,
also.
Eli. But I mean, Brett Favre reminded me of Archie Manning, because that's the type of beating Archie Manning took every day, every game type of thing. But now, however, the offensive line has to protect them. Peyton Manning's a vanilla quarterback, probably the best ever. But I mean, he's not fancy. He can read defenses probably better than anybody, probably more quickly than anybody.
Right.
I think where the Colts get sold short is their defense is better than people think.
I think the defense is better than it was the year they won the Super Bowl. The key could be the running game, which heavily favors the Saints. You have Reggie Bush, you have Pierre Thomas. The Colts need a huge game from Joseph Adai. I mean, the running game has to pick up, because you're not going to be able to do against the Saints, I think, what you did against the Jets.
Great point, too, and I'd like to go back to the AFC Championship game. The Jets were up by 11 points, reeling off 17 points to lead 17-6, and the Colts got that touchdown right before the end of the half. Of course, that was all Peyton Manning getting the ball,
3 catches.
or as Hank Stram would say, matriculating the ball down the field. But in the second half, Joe's got a great point. Indianapolis got Joseph Adai back into the game. They went back into a running mode, passing mode. The 2 rookie wide receivers that they have, those first-year wide receivers, Marcone having the game of his career. But Indianapolis has that type of offense. They're so explosive. The Judge, you and I talked about
Yes,
that
we
in
did.
an edition of the Sports Express. It was the Patriot game, where the Patriots, if you remember, that was probably one of the most exciting games of the season, Sunday Night Football, and the Patriots had a 14-point lead, possibly a 17-point lead, and the Colts came back, and they won that game. If you remember, right at the end of the game, and they scored that touchdown with under a minute to go. Bill Belichick was criticized for going for it on fourth down. The Colts took the ball. Peyton Manning had the opportunity. They won the game. Perfect pass to Reggie Wayne. The Colts, they have that type of offense.
Judge Munley, Reggie Bush, though, he's been loaded for bear. He's finally living up to that Heisman promise coming in. I mean, if he runs like he's capable of,
Reggie Bush
you know,
Reggie Bush is going to go down as one of the greatest runners in the last 10 years. He's just phenomenal. But here's one thing I want to say: why I don't think New Orleans Saints, and I'm for them all the way. They had, how many turnovers was there? 5 turnovers.
5.
Yeah.
5 turnovers.
Well, I think actually there was more, but they recovered some of their own.
Yeah, but still,
There might have been 8.
Yeah,
It was a
okay.
very sloppy
But
game.
it was,
A lot of
and it was
mistakes.
sloppy. But yet, Brett Favre was in the game right to the end.
Well, actually,
But
actually,
5
Brett Favre outplayed them.
That's what I'm
But
saying.
if defense Larry Spagar wins championships, edge to the Saints. Now, let me tell you something. Neither of these defenses are highly ranked. This should be a real shootout. Should be a high-scoring game.
But I like the defenses.
The Saints lead the NFL this year in takeaways, and they have 7 in the postseason. Of course, 5 against Minnesota or 6. But here's the thing: with Darren Sharper, with that secondary, with the key now is
Super
will
Bowl
Bobby
experience.
McRae, the defensive end, play? If they could hit Peyton Manning like they hit Brett Favre and likely future Hall of Famer Kurt Warner, and we'll talk about that later. If they could rush, get Manning out of sync, you got to give the advantage to the Saints defense.
Well, I'll tell you what, why I like both of these teams, I like what Joe's saying, but I'm going to go back over on the other side. I like the Colts defense. And I want to say that these are the 2 most complete teams, most consistent teams all season. Again, we talked about this earlier during the season. We liked the Colts in the AFC. They were the team that was the most explosive and had a defense that was playing teams and holding their own. On the other side, we liked the Saints in the NFC. They were a team that always found a way to win, high-octane offense. Drew Brees coming of age in New Orleans. It's a great story. The Saints are coming, number 1 seed. The Colts are a number 1 seed. The Saints
it
defense
worked out perfectly.
Yeah,
And-
I think these are the 2 most complete teams, and I think we're gonna get a great Super Bowl.
And we have to mention one more thing, Joe. Sean Payton,
Absolutely,
local
great coach.
ties here,
Yep.
spends time in Scranton. I went to
Absolutely.
he's related to the Corbett's in Manuka,
Right.
comes to visit them.
He's done a great job in New
He's
Orleans.
done a great job.
Yeah.
And actually, Joe, because I hope we can get him, he might be in for a big dinner that we're having in the city of Scranton. And we're hoping to get Sean Payton as our principal speaker.
Very good. You know, Joe, injuries are going to play an issue. Dwight Freeney, the All-Pro defensive end. Robert Mathis has to step it up in that Colts line. The other one, Jeremy Shockey for the Saints. I mean, he's an impact player. This could be the second Super Bowl he
That he
misses,
misses
if you
'cause of injury.
remember, with the Jets.
That's right.
So, but injuries are really going to play. I think the Colts defense, and you're right, they're not slouches. But guys like
They're
Larry
tough.
Brackett, Anton Bethea, they need to stick it up. They
The
need
one
to step it up.
analogy I had to the Colts defense, and I wanted to ask the three of you if you'll agree with me. The Baltimore Ravens, that playoff game, the Ravens have Ray Lewis. It's a trademark defense with all pro safeties, a very physical team. That game was expected to be tight. The issue was whether or not the Colts could move the ball on the Ravens defense. The storyline, as it turned out, was the Colts defense put down the clamps on the Ravens offense
Absolutely.
and totally shut them down and knocked them out of the game. I think the Colts defense is very impressive, and I like what Joe said, though. Those Saints, that defense on the Saints, they give you a lot of different looks. They have a lot of different
Absolutely.
blitzing. It's going to be
Well,
interesting.
That is
very
true, but you know what,
interesting.
I think too, that there's not a better quarterback in football that can read defenses as quickly and as accurately as Peyton Manning.
Oh, he's the
Man.
general.
I mean,
No doubt
it's
about
just,
it.
and that's how he figured out
Sure.
all these come from behind wins.
But
He
you know
figured
what?
out their
Do you know
defense.
how many audibles he has from, when he goes up there
Right.
behind the center, he audibles all the time.
He's one of the most animated quarterbacks
He
to ever
is.
play the game.
And they say one of the most intelligent.
Yeah.
You know one thing I noticed about Peyton Manning, if they're winning, if the Colts are ahead, he'll be on the sidelines talking to all the players, patting them. Watch if they're behind. He sits by himself on the bench, reading all the plays
All the
that he wants
plays.
to.
Right, looking at the-
He's-
looking at the
he's-
pictures.
Right, he's amazing. He's
Like the
just-
Jets game.
Nobody's allowed to talk to him. He just sits there by himself and goes through everything.
Well, you know, I mean, here's how good they are. Let's be honest. Now, you're talking with a team that is the weakest in the NFL in the run. They have the lowest ratings in terms of the run. They've had no running game this year hardly, but yet they've been so dominant.
And
Here's
you're
a
right.
team, and I'll take a look at their receivers. The great Marvin Harrison retires. Anthony Gonzalez lost to injury.
That's right.
They didn't skip a beat with Dallas Clark, Austin Collie. Where did he come from?
Yeah.
Reggie
Whoever
Wayne.
heard Reggie
Right.
Wayne?
Pierre
So
Marcone.
this is a team, and I think Bill Polian, I think the Ursays, Bill Polian, I think they really got it down where they've built a solid, well-run franchise. They've been able to really find impact players that have stepped up where they haven't missed the Marvin Harrisons. And having somebody like Peyton Manning, the receivers have got to have the confidence to know he's going to get the ball to them.
How about
And
they
I
haven't
think-
missed Bob Sanders?
Absolutely. On the
Right.
That's
defensive
unbelievable on the
side, that's
defensive
another
side. He was
great
the best
point.
defensive player in the
And
NFL.
yet that defense
Yeah.
is actually playing better now this year. That is incredible without Bob Sanders.
It's gonna be a great game.
How
You know-
about the quarterbacks? I just wanted to mention, we were
Right.
talking about it, and Joe, that's a great point about Peyton Manning. And you know, Peyton's the NFL Player of the Year. He's great. Actually, 3 years ago, the Colts won the Super Bowl, so he was the MVP as well. So Peyton Manning and a number of those other Colts, that's an experience factor. Plus, they're playing in Miami again. So they're staying at the same hotel. They're going to keep their practice regimen pretty much the same. So you have to think that that's an experience factor to edge the Colts. But let's go back to the Saints again. Again, in fairness to both teams, let's go back to the Saints. First ever Super Bowl, a lot of momentum, America's story, the magic of Mardi Gras. This is actually the Mardi Gras season. All those folks feeling well. I mean, Miami is near New Orleans. I mean, you're going to see a lot of people going down from New Orleans in Louisiana. It's going to be a big, big image for the Saints. And I think that the Saints have that attitude and they have that authenticity of being there for the first time. And they've had a great season. And if they can step up, Drew Brees has had a great season. If he could step up and go toe-to-toe with Peyton Manning, again, we're going to be in for a very interesting
Drew
game.
Brees could be the most important player in the Super Bowl, if they win. He
You
could
know-
be the most important person on that field.
I think you're absolutely. It's a tall order for the Saints, but I think it's one they're capable of.
Oh,
I think if they
absolutely.
could
I
avoid
think
the
they're definitely
mental
capable
mistakes,
of
they're
it.
going to
I
have to
certainly
force
hope
some
so.
turnovers.
I
Absolutely.
made
We're gonna have to
predictions, but
first some
I'm
turnovers.
predicting Indianapolis, but.
Well, no.
I
Hold,
knew
we're
you
gonna,
would.
we're
I
gonna
knew
end
the
the
judge
discussion
would.
on that. Don't say that
Oh,
yet.
Joe doesn't wanna hear
I
it.
do wanna say that it does have to be something for Archie Manning to have both sons Super Bowl winning quarterbacks.
Both MVPs.
And both MVPs. I think that, and I can't say I'm a real big Manning buff, but I mean, you just have to with Peyton Manning. You are possibly looking at history. I think he has to win a couple more rings before you say the best ever. There's a couple guys named Joe Montana that might be able to argue with that.
How about Tom Brady?
Tom Brady, obviously,
Exactly.
You
but I
can't pick
really
the best.
think
You know, we said this on our. You can't pick the best quarterback in football. You can't pick the best boxer in
Different time
different
periods.
time
Different
periods.
times.
Right.
Different
You
eras.
just can't
I
do it.
agree.
But
Baseball.
let's end this segment
Okay.
with Super Bowl predictions, and we're gonna let the judge go first.
Oh,
Go ahead.
We kind of know over there,
yeah,
Tom.
you kind of know.
Right.
The cat's out of
My
the
heart
bag.
is with the Saints, but it's not going to happen. Indianapolis, they're going to win by probably 10 to 14 points. That's my prediction.
Joe Gilroy.
You know what, and just in case I have to stand in front of him someday, no, I don't think that'll ever happen, just as a friend. No, I think it's gonna be a blowout. I think the Colts are just gonna win big. I think they're gonna get an early lead, and then they're just gonna pour it on, and they won't let up, they won't take their foot off the gas.
Okay,
Larry Spagar, who is going to the Super Bowl en route
Yeah.
tomorrow to Miami.
And he won't take us.
What's your
no,
prediction?
I'm just fortunate to be able to be going myself.
No, I want to say this before Larry makes a prediction. This is his 12th Super Bowl appearance.
There.
Larry Spagar, congratulations, and we'll be living through you when you're at that
no,
game.
but listen,
We'll be looking for you on TV.
And I want you all to know, but this is a highlight for me. I mean, being here with my good friends, Tom Munley,
Compared
Joe
to the
Ricardo,
Super Bowl,
John-
shut up.
But
Compared
Tom,
to the Super
you're
Bowl,
getting me
oh,
excited
come
about
on.
going. This is like the send-off. It's
Yeah.
the pre-Super Bowl.
Alrighty
I
there,
need
you
that. I
know,
love
come
talking
on.
football
It's
with you
getting
guys.
kind of deep in here, boys.
And we don't
like
have
talking
shovels in the
that.
studio.
What's your prediction?
My prediction, first of all, too, and I'm going to be fair too, as an objective and as an analyst. If I'm going to the game, I'm going to be neutral. I'm going to be neutral because I like both teams, and I think this is a game that's very close. I think it's one that could very well go down to the wire. I like the Saints for a lot of reasons, for a lot of those things that we already talked about. First ever Super Bowl, the magic of New Orleans, the Katrina, that
The whole Katrina aspect,
devastation.
yeah.
A great story. If the Saints were to win it, it could be. I think it's right up there with the Red Sox first World Series since 1918. This could really be a marquee event, and to be able to see that, and perhaps for me to personally witness that, would be absolutely one of my greatest sports memories. On the other side, I like what the judge mentions, and as he always does, he brings up some great points. And that is that the Colts are a very good team. They have a great quarterback in Peyton Manning. They have a great nucleus. The experience is there. They've been to Miami before. But I still say if the Colts play up to their capability and the Saints play up to their capability, this one is close. It goes down to the wire. The Colts might be favored, but I think the Saints have a shot at it.
All right, now
Who
wait,
do
who do
you
you think?
predict?
You're
I
talking like
like
a
both.
politician. What are you running for office in both cities? All right, now
I like both.
let me just tell you before I give my prediction. In all
Steelers-
deference to Larry, I know this my
The
Steelers
Steelers aren't in
did
it, Joe.
broke
You
my
can't
heart.
pick them.
But let me tell you something. If it meant going to the Super Bowl, I would ditch you guys in a second. All right, none of this crap about how honored. Okay.
Well, I'm sincere. and
Let me
it's
give you
not-
my prediction.
Absolutely.
Who dat? The New Orleans Saints. We're talking a Super Bowl upset. They're going to win by a field goal, by 3. I think they've got a little bit of confidence. I think the defense wins championships. You still got to give an edge. I agree. The Colts defense is not bad, but I got to give. I think that Saints secondary, led by Sharper and a couple of those other guys, I think they're going to step up. I think they're going to force some turnovers. I think guys like if McCray plays, Will Smith, they're going to get to Manning. They're going to disrupt his rhythm. They're going to win by a
Well,
field goal.
one of the wild cards will be Freeney.
Right.
Because Freeney's
Freeney-
questionable
The
at best.
injury.
I hope you're right, Joe, but it's
You
not
know what?
going to happen.
That
man.
Colts offensive line has a tall order. Okay, real quick, before we get off football, let's talk a little bit Brett Favre. I'm going to say something to you. I've never been a huge Brett Favre fan, but you have to respect the guy's grit, his courage. What he did 2 weeks ago was heroic.
I think what he did all
Downright
season is
heroic.
heroic.
Well, but I mean, getting up.
Yeah.
Time after time
Barely
after
getting up
barely
sometimes, but he
giving
got up.
And if I have to draw an analogy, and I can't believe I'm doing this because it really kills me to say this, kind of like Schilling with the bloody sock.
Yeah, that's
It really
painful,
is.
yeah.
I mean, you know
Yeah,
what?
but that was ketchup,
This
wasn't it?
guy showed guts.
Yeah, but he made the one mental mistake at the end of the game.
He always
He
does
always
that,
does
though.
that.
He
You
did
know,
it 2
and then-
years ago against the
but-
Giants, and he's done it his whole
and-
career.
I could be one of the few people in the country, I don't like Brett Favre at all as a person. I think he's the most selfish player ever to play in the NFL.
A lot of people feel
I
that
really
way, the
feel
way
that
he's
way.
been vacillating.
But at
Why?
the same
Because of
time,
his vacillation?
Because of his vacillation and the way,
Right.
and I think he got a raw deal at Green Bay, but he's always been a prima donna in the last 15 years of his career. With that said, I have to agree with you 100%. He earned my respect
Heroic.
that day.
Heroic.
Yeah, I mean, you can't take
Yeah.
it away from him. I mean, that guy just showed us
I've been
what he's made
impressed
of.
with them all season, and if you remember at the beginning of the year, you know, that was always the big story. Is Brett Favre going to retire? He's going to play. You know, there were people that did not like him playing, other people like, you know, I just say, I think it's great for him. The guy turned 40 years old this year. He had a great season. They were in the playoffs. I mean, maybe one drive and possibly one play away from even being in the Super Bowl. You know, I credit Brett Favre. I think he's such a gamer and he's a tremendous talent
But
to
Judge
the NFL.
Munley, he's had that recklessness about him his whole career.
You know, I never
2
had-
years ago, we
right,
saw him
that's
throw
right,
away against
that's
the
right.
Giants. And even when he was with Green Bay, even during his prime years,
He-
always
he-
would
he
try
did
to
it the
force that
Super Bowl
throw.
that Green Bay lost.
I
that time.
mean, it's elementary that you don't throw across your body like he did.
Few players
He
could.
knows that he's not supposed to. I agree with Joe to a point where it seems to me like he feels it's all about him.
Mhm.
You know, had he completed that pass, it would have been one of the.
Then he's a hero.
He's a hero, but yet he should have known better. They-
Should have ran the ball, even if he was
If
hobbled.
he gained
he should have ran.
Absolutely.
if he gained 5
Absolutely.
yards, they could have kicked the field goal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know,
And it
and
just doesn't make sense to
I
me.
think he honestly believes he is Superman and could do anything.
Well,
And you
You
know
know what
what?
it does
That's
prove?
not, you know what? He's had a pretty good career.
Can't
There's
argue
a-
the numbers.
There's a bust waiting for him at Canton
When
in
we're
No
in
doubt
the
about it.
NFL Hall of
Oh, yeah.
Famer.
But he does, sometimes there's a, you know, reckless, you gotta be a little bit smart, you've gotta know your limitations. We've seen him time and again throw away these big games, but guess what, he's gotten the teams there time and again too.
It's a
And yet,
double-edged sword.
You go back to that
Absolutely.
throw against the 49ers in week
Absolutely.
2.
That was
I
one of the
mean,
greatest
that was
plays
one of the
of the
greatest
year.
plays of the year.
Well, that's when
They
I
still
said,
show it on
oh,
the
he's back
highlights.
for sure.
But Brett, can I say one other thing
Yeah.
about Brett Favre too? You know, I agree with everything that's being said today, obviously reflecting both sides. But I think what that showed, it echoes something throughout pro football, but not only pro football, down to college and high school, and even the smaller the teen and the young and the youth. And that is a big star, 40 years old, playing quarterback in the NFL. He's everything that we all talked about, future NFL Hall of Famer, but he made a mistake. And it could happen. And it did happen to Brett Favre, but it can happen to any player, anywhere, in any sport. And
Well,
I
the
think that's
greatest,
what
the
that
greatest
proves.
quarterbacks, I remember my Terry Bradshaw would have 3-4 interceptions in a Super Bowl,
Oh, yeah.
but he would always then throw that touchdown pass. I think you're right, Favre, any mental mistake he makes was more than compensated by the quality of his play. Let me just end this about Brett Favre. I think if he wants to stay married, he's going to retire. Because if you remember the shots of
Yes, I
Diana
did.
Favre, she wants him gone. That body is hurting.
Yeah.
Brett, retire.
Yeah.
You've done everything there is to do. Just retire.
Well,
At
Kurt
one point
Warner,
in the
Kurt
game,
Warner
they
got the
showed her-
message.
She
Well,
couldn't- she
okay.
couldn't even look anymore.
That's a
You predict
segue.
he's
Kurt
gonna
Warner.
retire?
Not only is Kurt Warner, well, he did retire.
Yeah, but
Kurt
you think,
Warner.
I'm talking about
Brett
Brett.
Favre?
Yeah.
I think
Let's
he
predict-
retires.
Let's make a prediction.
Retire.
The judge
I think
likes
he-
those predictions.
I think he retires.
I say Brett Favre will still play.
I say he still plays.
He might. He just might.
Okay.
Let's talk about Kurt Warner.
All right.
In my opinion, 14 quarterbacks in the last 25 years have been elected to the Hall of Fame. Warner's statistic either matches or surpasses all of them. He's got a 65.5% completion rate. He's thrown for over 32,000 yards and 208 touchdowns. Judge Munley, this guy goes into the Hall of Fame in 5 years.
Well-
I don't see how he doesn't. Two-time
Well,
MVP,
well, Joe,
two-time.
I think he's gonna have a hard time.
Why?
For some reason, Warner doesn't seem to rise up to the level of the Peyton Mannings and the Drew Brees and Brett Favre. I don't know what it is.
Two-time MVP.
I agree with you, Joe, but I think there's gonna be a lot of no votes when it's time for the vote on whether.
Is
Well,
he going to Canton?
I think he's going to go to Canton, but I have to somewhat agree with the judge there because he might have a more difficult time than we think, mainly because of his longevity in the league.
Right.
He really wasn't in the league as long as a lot of those other quarterbacks. Now, what I think his greatest accomplishment is, besides his numbers, he changed the culture of two teams. Changed the culture of the
Right.
Rams, greatest show on turf.
Right.
He changed the culture of the Cardinals.
Right.
Coming off the bench, each time.
Perennial cellar dwellers.
You know
Yeah.
what, Larry, what might hurt him too is the fact this guy, he wasn't drafted by a big school. This guy was bagging groceries.
I know, it was
Yeah.
I mean,
bagging groceries.
his
Arena
story,
League and-
Arena League, but you know what, when he got there, look at what he did. And let's be honest, he lost 2 Super Bowls, think about it.
Yeah.
Came within a second of beating my Steelers. Lost a real tough one to the Patriots.
Yeah, it was at
I
the.
mean, this guy
Yeah.
could have
End of
3
the game.
rings.
He'll never
How
be
did-
looked at in the same light
No,
as
no,
Joe
he
Montana.
won't, but he deserves to be in Canton. What do you think?
I agree with the comments by Judge
Right,
and
so
Joe
do
in the
I.
end, but I think Joe Ricardo's right. I think he gets into the Hall of Fame. To me, it's a
Well, I think he's
definite.
gonna get
Kurt
in,
Warner's
but I don't
definitely
think
in.
he'll get in on the first ballot.
I think it's gonna be hard.
But I think he'll get in, you know, in our lifetimes,
The other
hopefully.
thing too, and Joe Ricardo mentioned this, and Joe, this is another good point. Kurt Warner's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a great story. Look
Yeah.
where he came from, and then he got into the NFL, and he took him right into the Super Bowl, and he won the Super Bowl
Joe's
with
right.
the Rams.
He was actually bagging groceries
Yeah.
at a
That's
grocery
right.
store.
Well, you know, the other thing is he took that one shot, and I think he
Yeah.
got up. I think he decided right there.
Yeah, that was the decision maker
retire.
there.
And it was
Yeah. He
delivered
didn't
by the
even-
Saints defense.
Yeah.
Right.
He didn't even have to call home.
I think
knew-
he said, I want to live to spend some of this money.
Yeah.
That had to be one of the shots of the year.
That was
I
a-
want
my
to switch.
goodness.
Let's get off football for just a second. I want to turn because baseball's heating up. Pitchers and catchers report
couple
in a little
weeks.
bit over a week. Within 2 weeks they report. Let's talk baseball. Let's talk the Philadelphia Phillies for a second because I've been chewing on this a long time.
I think I know where you're going.
Pick up the righty Roy Halladay, but you let Cliff Lee go. Why not have a rotation? Right now, you've got a roster of guys like Ryan Howard, Rollins, Shane Victorino. They're in their prime. This team with a rotation that would include Lee, Halladay, Hamels, if he could come back and
You know,
perform like he
he's
did
one
2
of my
years ago.
biggest disappointments.
We're talking dynasty here.
I don't
Now,
like Paul Hamels'
Ruben
attitude.
Amaro, the GM, comes back and says, but look, to keep Lee, we're going to have to trade away our future.
Yeah.
He's got a point. But Joe, does it make sense to sign Halladay, get that power from the right, and not bring on and not keep the great lefty Cliff Lee?
It doesn't make economic sense, and that's the only reason they did it. Lee has 1 more year to be a free agent, and plus of mortgaging the future, they just thought economically it wasn't worth it. As a fan, it makes perfect sense to have them both, but the business of baseball is business.
Yeah. What do you think, Larry?
Yeah, I think it's great. In fact, I'm thinking about this during the off season. I'm thinking too, Phillies. I mean, Phillies in the National League are a powerhouse, and I think that they have every opportunity to make it back to the World Series. In fact, preseason, I'm liking the Phillies and the Yankees for a repeat in the
Yeah.
World Series.
Yeah, and we said that, Larry, and I agree with Larry on that. I think that's what's gonna happen. But I do want to say this, Cole Hamels to me is a big disappointment. His attitude.
Even his attitude,
His
yeah.
attitude just is
Yeah,
terrible.
especially near the end of the
A man
year.
who's on top of the world, a man who gets millions of dollars every year, to make the comments he made. One time he said, I wish we were done with this, or something like that. It's just it's a terrible.
Well, you know what?
Commentary on him.
I agree, but if Hamels could pitch the way he did 2 years ago, winning was the World Series MVP. Look,
Yeah, winning cures everything.
Cliff
Yeah.
Lee went 4-0 in the postseason and had a 156 ERA. My advice to Philadelphia, and I understand your point about economics, I understand Ruben Amaro, but you know what, Philadelphia, you're not a small market team. Reach into your pockets, get up there with the Yankees and Red Sox. Stop crying about your budget and then payroll, and I'm a small market team. You're not a small market team. They had a chance to put together a dynasty that could have rivaled what the
Yeah.
Yankees did in the late 90s.
Let's go from being
that
good to
could have
great.
rivaled that good to great. You know what? Pay Lee, put together the rotation. I think you owe it to your fans who, prior to a couple years ago, were the long-suffering fans.
But the other side of that, there was a similar situation without the magnitude of that, is the Yankees and Johnny Damon.
Right, right.
You know, they're big, well, maybe we'll talk about that later, but their left-handed hitting is in trouble.
Why do you bring Randy Wynn on? You pass on some of the guys. Now you have Real with Matsui gone and Damon gone.
Yeah.
And
You
Damon
got
didn't
problems
wanna
from the
leave.
left.
Right, he didn't
Damon
want.
did not want to
Yeah,
leave.
but if you're Johnny Damon and you're that old, you swallow your pride
Yeah.
a little bit and you accept the 14
you accept-
million.
yeah, right.
You accept
Yeah.
the 14
No,
million.
really, I agree.
You take the
Because
pay
guess
cut.
what? Now you take the pay cut.
I agree, you
I mean,
take the
come
pay
on.
cut.
I mean, we have 10% unemployment in this
Yeah.
country. Take
Yeah.
the pay cut,
I'll
Johnny.
take a $14
Stay in
million
pinstripe.
No, I agree.
Plus, you're going to pick up money. The whole world, the worst player on the Yankees is world famous.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, what happens if he goes to back to Kansas City?
Yeah.
Whoever knew
I
about
always
this guy?
think of Chuck Knobloch. Who would have ever
Yeah.
heard about him? Because
Absolutely.
he played for the Yankees, everybody knows who he is.
Plus he forgot how to throw, but that's
Yeah.
a
I
whole
mean-
other story.
I mean, you bring Randy Wynn. You're talking a guy batting 158 last year against lefties. Curtis Granderson they bring on.
Yeah, but,
183 versus
well,
lefties.
lefties, he doesn't hit lefties well.
Let's talk about pitching a little bit. I'll tell you, I have a new Joba rule. Pack your bags and get out.
I call Joba to me is their Joba
It's a tough
Chamberlain.
crowd.
Yeah,
He's the new Arabu. Remember Arabu? The
Yeah, oh, of
Japanese
course.
pitcher they
Oh,
brought over. He
yeah.
was supposed to be the phenom
Oh,
of
yeah.
phenoms.
Yeah.
And I think Job is a better
I
pitcher
think you
than
keep
Arabu, but
Phil
not
Hughes.
much.
Phil Hughes is making a squawk about starting. He's not a starter. Keep him in the bullpen. You got CC Sabathia. You got a Burnett who hopefully might get a little bit consistent. He's never been, but hopefully you've got a good rotation. You know, my feeling with Joba Chamberlain is you've invested enough time and energy on this guy. It's time for him to go away.
Well, at the same time, to be fair, they haven't never defined his role. You know, and they babied him too
Right.
much. I mean, either you're a starter or you're a reliever or you're a setup man. You know, you're not a starter for 6 innings or 5 innings or 100 pitches, and then a closer and then a reliever,
Right.
and then back to being a
Right.
starter. And you know, he played big college baseball. He's used to pressure.
Two other quick points. Back to Johnny Damon, 60 extra base hits. You're losing a really impact player.
How about
here.
the play in the
I
World
don't-
Series
they
when
don't-
he stole
they
third
don't win that
base?
game. They do not- that
That
World
turned the
Series
series when he
doesn't
stole
matter.
third base.
I didn't
They
want to
don't-
lose Johnny
Yeah.
Damon. I liked him. I liked his style.
Yeah.
Every time he got up to the plate, he was a threat.
Yeah, but I have to admit, I hated it when he played for the Red
Oh
Sox.
yeah,
I was just gonna
He
say,
just
what about when he
needed a-
played for the Red Sox?
He just needed a good
you
shave.
hated his long hair. That's
Yeah,
a
neither
good
the hair.
Other thing for the Yankees, watch the July trade deadline.
Yeah.
Word is Carl Crawford will be on the market.
Yeah.
Gives you
Speed.
speed,
Speed.
versatility. Finally, we're gonna end with a last baseball note. You gotta like the Minnesota Twins moving to really slap a franchise tag on Joe Mauer.
Yeah.
Who just might, when it all ends up, be, really one of the elite great players. He's certainly on target.
Yeah.
I think he's
10-year
one of the
con-
best players
but,
in baseball
hey,
today.
He just needs longevity to get to the Hall.
3 batting titles, 2 Gold Gloves, MVP, American League MVP. And what I like about this is, and I want to get back to baseball economics, and I know you teach economics, you're a business teacher. Minnesota finally got it. You got to pay the big money for the results. They're gonna christen a new ballpark this year.
And they got to fill it.
Minnesota, in this country, if you're not Judge Munley in Alaska, the Aleutian Islands, there is no small market.
Yeah.
No,
With
that's right.
travel, money, big corporate
That's a good
interest,
point, yeah.
there is no small market in America. So Minnesota, Milwaukee, and all the other Pittsburgh,
Yep.
there are no small market teams. There shouldn't be.
That's
Well,
a good point, Joe.
They talk about a cap in baseball. There should be a floor. You should not own a baseball team if you're not willing to at least post a payroll of $50 million. This crap where you saw in Florida with the Marlins the year after they won the World Series,
When they disbanded.
where Girardi had a $15 million payroll, that's bogus. It shouldn't be allowed. They should be forced, the owner should come together with the commissioner and say, if you're not willing to invest in your team, get out. Minnesota may make a major investment in Joe Mauer, and it's about time.
And Joe, you're on the right track there. There's actually big markets and bigger markets. That's how they should be defined.
Absolutely.
The,
Good point.
But how about Minnesota with the Vikes and the Twins? Can you
They're
imagine?
exciting, and they have a
How
new
about the Twins
stadium.
going outside?
And they have a new
Yeah.
stadium.
Of course, I don't know if I want to
going,
go to a game in early
Can
April
I
there.
mention,
Yeah.
can I mention one other thing
Sure.
about Super Bowl too? Because I have them with me too. I just, I wanted to say thank you too to Mark and everyone else at Electric City. For those of you that are Super Bowl fans, what we're talking about here today, I have been fortunate to be able to get to some. I know Joe's a Steeler fan,
Big Steeler
and I know
fan.
a lot of you are Steeler fans out
Yep.
there. And they played it last year, but it's going to be replayed. But there's a film on the Steelers taking the bus, Jerome Bettis, back home to Detroit. in Super Bowl 40 with the Steelers winning their 5th NFL World Championship. The courtesy of Electric City Television, as they will be playing that starting this week as well. Plus Super Bowl 41, which is an interesting look at the Chicago Bears and the Indianapolis Colts, the excitement of their fans, and it's a good preview of Miami about what a Super Bowl is like. So again, I'd like to thank the staff, and going back there again this year, I'm looking New Orleans, Indianapolis. That's why I don't make an actual prediction. I try to be fair because I'm going to the game, and it's, I like to be with both sides. So I really don't want to take a position. I want to be able to do some filming with the Colts and some filming with the Saints and have a
hang
great
on.
time.
So you're going to wear a reversible jersey.
There you go. All right.
Just wear a neutral color.
Before we wrap up, I want to do one quick round robin. I think the Eagles fan, this is something that's on the tip of their tongue. Donovan McNabb, does he come back next year or not?
He comes back, but he does come back next year. But Joe, as you know, I was never a McNabb
Right.
fan. He does come back next year, but I don't think that he's going to be there for the big game.
Yeah,
Whenever
not a big game
he's
quarterback.
not a big
Not
game
a big game
quarterback. And I
quarterback.
said that about him, Joe, to you many years ago.
Yeah. Joe Gilroy, does he come back?
Yeah, he comes back, and I know the judge has always been an Eagles fan, and he's never liked really Donovan McNabb a lot. And I'm a Giant fan, but I've always liked Donovan McNabb. So, but will he come back? The simple answer is yes.
Larry?
Yeah, I think he's already said in the Pro Bowl. He was interviewed. He's right after he threw a touchdown pass. He said, "I love Philadelphia. Everybody's talking, but I love Philadelphia." I say he's back, and I say don't give up on him. I still say don't give up on Donovan McNabb. There is too much talent in Philadelphia for the Eagles to be bad. There's a lot of talent there. If they catch fire, they're a team. They're definitely.
Listen, let me tell you about Donovan McNabb. Here's a case where the Hall will be very interesting. Certainly statistically a Hall of Fame quarterback. His performance in the big game's horrible. If you're Jeffrey Lurie, you have to be just beside yourself. You go into the first Dallas loss, perhaps playing the best football there is in the league. You lay an egg 1 week in Dallas, you go back to the same situation, and you lay even a bigger egg. So as far as I'm concerned, does Donovan McNabb come back? Yes, he does. But I think his entire career is going to be overshadowed and encapsulated by the last 2 minutes of that Super Bowl,
Unless he wins
unless he wins one, where he couldn't get the job done.
And I hope he does win one. I love the Eagles.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I hope he does win. But I want to say one
It's
thing
his inability to drive that team down.
As a
the last
person,
minute, though.
in his personal life, he's a great man because one
Right.
of my good friends played at Syracuse with him. He called McNabb up and he said, "Look, can I come to Philadelphia? I have a couple of kids who want to meet with you, my sons." And he said, "No, come to my house." He said, "You come
Wow.
to my house, spend a couple hours with me, let your kids get to meet me." That is a great man to do something like that.
I like Donovan McNabb.
Yeah.
For the Eagles, one comment I'd love to say about the Eagles, one of the greatest games I was ever happy to be part of, my brother's an Eagle diehard, and I promised him that if the Eagles hosted the NFC Championship game, I would take him. And they did. And we went in January 2005, and they beat the Atlanta Falcons with Michael Vick at home at Lincoln Financial Field. That, Super Bowls included, that was one of the most exciting, one of the most just emotional days to see those Eagle fans finally celebrate. We're going to the Super Bowl. That was just
It's a
awesome.
good thing Santa Claus didn't show
You know
up.
what the other, the other thing too is that you got to look at with the Eagles and just to mention really quickly, it doesn't appear that Brian Westbrook is ever going to stay healthy. That's been a key. That's been even bigger than McNabb. The inability to keep Westbrook healthy, who, in my opinion, would be going to the Hall of Fame. when he
I
retired
agree.
If
I
he
agree.
stayed healthy,
Yeah.
but he just can't stay
I
healthy.
agree.
And you know what? It's been there. This team. My attitude on Andy Reid is, great coach. McNabb, great quarterback, certainly have done it all but win a Super Bowl, but I'm not so sure under Andy Reid's tutelage that they could overcome that hurdle.
Yeah.
I just
But,
don't think.
McNabb could get to the Hall someday. I mean, Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl.
Right.
Right.
So, and
Right.
time has a way of
healing-
those
of
and,
making
and,
it forget.
and not
I
magnifying
hope he gets
the
in
thing.
the Hall.
But I don't think you get on a first ballot ever.
No.
I mean, how do you think some of these coaches? Here's Jim Caldwell from the Colts, first-year coach,
First year.
only the fifth
Yeah.
in history to be going to the Super Bowl his first year.
Right.
I mean, you have some coaches, great coaches,
Yeah.
that never got there. If he wins this one, I mean, how do you think the Bud Grants feel about
Yeah.
this? I mean, there's a guy who
Actually,
took the
I was-
Vikings
Four
to
tries,
four
right?
tries.
I was
so-
surprised to see
or-
Bud Grant at the game because I hate to say, I thought he had passed away, but I did.
Yeah.
And there he was sitting, and it looked pretty good for a guy. He's in his 80s.
83.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me just say, this has been so enjoyable. Now, I've reserved comment on this. I hope my mother's not watching. I was in New Orleans. I was there for spring break, and I don't remember much. I came back with two things: a hangover and a lot of beads.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all I could say.
Yeah, we've
but I
all
know
been.
Judge Munley went to law school there. We've all been there. The Saints, great story. Watch the Super Bowl on Sunday. Remember our predictions. Maybe even
Maybe not.
ECTV will air this after the Super Bowl just to embarrass some of us. But it's been great. And gentlemen, Larry, I'm going to let you sign off because you're headed to the Super Bowl tomorrow.
Oh, I just want to say again, this means a lot to be able to be here with my good friends, these three gentlemen sitting with me, talking sports. There is no better way that I'd like to be sent off to Miami, already with the enthusiasm and the excitement, just the ability to talk about sports. And yes, I'm going to be doing some filming down there, and I hope that we have a tremendous game. It's a great game, and it's just monumental for whatever reason, whether it's for the Saints reasons or for the Colts or for both of them. Somehow, let's hope that this is just a great American story for a great American sporting event for the Super Bowl.
Take care.